In the world of music, the dreams of artists often collide with the greed of those who manage them. A shocking truth emerged in the 1950s when it became clear that two prominent managers, Jack Epstein and Freddie Parker, were overcharging their famous clients, Elvis Presley and others, for services rendered. While Epstein charged a standard 25%, claiming his extra role as Elvis' agent justified the fee, Parker's greed knew no bounds. He initially took 25% but quickly inflated his rate to 50%. But Parker's deceit went further than just inflating fees. He doctored financial records and made side deals, leaving a trail of financial confusion and betrayal. To understand the extent of their wrongdoing, consider this: the average fee at the time for managers was around 15%. Epstein, under the guise of managing Elvis' career and acting as his agent, took nearly twice as much. Parker started at 25% but escalated to 50%, all while manipulating the books to cover his tracks. His scams weren't just about money. He had a knack for talking his way out of trouble, a trait inherited from his days as a carnival huckster. Trusting an artist like Elvis to someone who would exploit them in such a blatant manner is a chilling thought. This wasn't an isolated incident. Other stars like Buddy Holly and Roy Wood faced similar exploitation. Holly, a brilliant musician, may have been lured into a bad deal by his manager, Norman Petty. Wood, another talented artist, fell victim to a scheme where his own home was registered under someone else's name, stripping him of ownership. These stories highlight a disturbing pattern in the music industry, where the pursuit of profit often overshadowed the artist's well-being and creativity. The case of Elvis Presley and his manager, Colonel Parker, is particularly egregious. Parker marketed Elvis as a wild, rebellious figure, a marketing strategy that worked wonders but came at a moral cost. While Epstein's financial practices were questionable, Parker's exploitation was blatant and harmful. Elvis, known for his respect and devotion, deserved better than to be treated as a mere marketing tool. Parker's actions were not just about money, they were about controlling a product, reducing a talented artist to a commodity. This era, however, was also a time of great musical transformation. The mid-1950s saw the rise of rock and roll, doo-wop in the US, and skiffle in the UK. Artists like Elvis, Little Richard, Gene Vincent, and Chuck Berry were breaking boundaries and setting new trends. Independent record labels and specialist concert promoters emerged, along with disc jockeys who played a crucial role in this revolution. Bill Haley's Rock Around the Clock ignited the rock and roll craze in 1955, but by mid-1957, his star began to fade as new talents emerged. The shift in music was driven by a changing demographic. For the first time, teenagers were recognized as a powerful force in the music market. Their spending power and unique tastes began to shape the industry. Before 1956, teenagers were largely ignored, but this changed dramatically as they embraced the new sounds of rock and roll and skiffle. The term teenager itself was coined in 1941, but it wasn't until the mid-1950s that their cultural impact was fully acknowledged. The rise of teenage stars like Elvis Presley marked a pivotal moment. Elvis, who turned 21 in 1956, was exploited by Parker to become a symbol of rebellion. This image worked wonders commercially, but it clashed with Elvis' true personality. He loved country music, R&B, and even crooners like Dean Martin, and was law-abiding and devout. Despite this, Parker's marketing strategy painted him as a defiant youth, a figure who challenged authority and parents. Elvis' success was staggering. In 1956 alone, he was at the top of the charts for 25 weeks, selling 12 million singles and 3 million albums in the US. This dominance meant that 60% of RCA's total sales were driven by his music. Yet, despite his wealth, Parker's financial tactics left Elvis in a precarious position. RCA initially refused to give Elvis a substantial contract, forcing him into a partnership with Steve Sholes and the Aberbachs to secure better terms. Steve Sholes, an RCA executive, had a vision to make country music appealing to a younger audience through Elvis. He partnered with music publishers Gene and Julian Aberbach to create Hill and Range, securing $15,000 to support this venture. Scholes learned from past mistakes, ensuring that all back catalog rights were secured when he brought Elvis to RCA. This strategic move helped protect Elvis' future and ensured he could focus on his music rather than being bogged down by financial entanglements. Chet Atkins, a talented guitarist and producer, played a crucial role in this transition. He worked closely with Scholes to assemble a band for Elvis, understanding the importance of a strong musical foundation. This collaboration marked a turning point, allowing Elvis to harness his talents and creativity in a more controlled and fair environment. The story of Elvis Presley and his managers is a cautionary tale. It highlights the fine line between savvy business and exploitation. While Epstein's practices were questionable, Parker's greed and manipulation were outright harmful. Elvis, a true talent, deserved better than to be treated as a marketing tool. His success should have shielded him from such treatment, but the industry's darker sides often overshadowed the artist's dreams. This era of musical revolution was not just about new sounds, it was also a period of significant cultural and social change. The rise of rock and roll and the recognition of teenagers as a powerful consumer group reshaped the music industry forever. Yet behind the glamour and success, stories of exploitation remind us of the importance of protecting artists and ensuring their voices are heard above the noise of greed. As Elvis Presley began his journey to stardom, things were heating up in the music world. In the first days of January, he was on the road, playing small shows with Johnny Cash and Carl Perkins. Carl was impressed. He thought Elvis stood out from the crowd. Elvis didn't dress like the typical musician. He didn't have that Mr. Ed vibe that most of his peers had. One cold January day, Elvis performed at a gym in Mississippi. This was just a small gig, but it was a stepping stone. 2 days later, he turned 21, but there's no record of him celebrating. Maybe he was too busy, thinking about the future and the big changes ahead. Colonel Parker, Elvis's manager, saw something special in him. He understood that Elvis wasn't just another country singer. He could attract a wide audience and was ready to lead a new wave of music, offering something different from Bill Haley. This was a big deal, and RCA Records took notice. They wanted to bet big on Elvis, even though there were doubts among the executives. Steve Scholes, an executive at RCA, believed in Elvis' potential. He knew that even if Elvis didn't appeal to everyone, he had a broad appeal, especially among country music fans. To show off Elvis' talent, Scholes took out a full-page ad in Billboard, calling Elvis the most talked-about new personality in the last 10 years of recorded music. This was a bold move, showing confidence in Elvis even before he hit the mainstream. While keeping the feel of his old Sun Records recordings, Scholes wanted a fuller sound for Elvis' new songs. He asked Chet Atkins, a skilled guitarist, to arrange it. Elvis wanted to work with the Jordanaires, a vocal group, but Atkins had already signed another gospel group, the Spear Family. After some discussion, Atkins put together a temporary trio to back Elvis on the recording. This trio consisted of Gordon Stoker, Brock, and Ben Spear. They had to figure out who would sing which part, but Chet Atkins assured them it wouldn't matter. At RCA, they had a top-notch studio in Nashville, a place that was always busy. They decided to use a converted church to capture the unique sound they wanted, reminiscent of the echo-heavy Sun Records recordings. This new studio was a big step up from the simple setup at Sun Studios. They even went to great lengths to avoid any noise that could ruin a recording, like keeping a Coca-Cola machine quiet. Elvis was on the rise with his song "I Forgot to Remember to Forget," but despite the success, there was a lot of nervous energy around. Steve Scholes was worried because some executives wanted to sabotage him. Sun Records had just released Carl Perkins' version of Blue Suede Shoes, and Scholes was unsure if Elvis could replicate that success. Chet Atkins also had doubts about whether he could improve on the sound of Sun Records. Elvis, along with Scotty Moore and Bill Black, was recording in a new, bigger studio outside of Sun Studios. Scotty was still finding his footing, learning from Chet Atkins instead of leading. Bill was nervous, knowing he was in a city full of talented musicians. Only Bill Black seemed at ease, keeping everyone laughing with his jokes. The new studio was more structured than the casual vibe at Sun. They used take numbers for every recording, something new to the band. They tried to replicate the unique echo of Sun's recordings using a long hallway and some clever setup with speakers and microphones. Even the little things mattered, like keeping Elvis' voice balanced with the music, not letting it overpower everything. Elvis was nervous about his guitar playing, especially in front of Chet Atkins, who had played with big names like Hank Williams. Gordon Stoker from the Jordanaires remembered meeting Elvis before this recording session. They warmed up with some gospel songs, but nothing was officially recorded. For the song I Got a Woman, they chose a hit by Ray Charles. Elvis loved performing it, but he kept moving around, making it hard to get a good sound. Scholes asked him to stand still, and after adding another microphone, they managed to get the take they needed. Elvis was known for his unique style, playing his guitar percussively and not wanting to be too loud. The story behind Heartbreak Hotel is often told one way, but the truth is a bit different. The song wasn't born from a newspaper clipping about suicide, as commonly believed. Instead, it came from a real-life story that was sensationalized in newspapers. A man named Alvin Kralik had attempted to rob a store in El Paso, where many had died protecting it. This story, along with Kralik's own failed marriage, inspired me, Boren Axton, and Tommy Durden to write Heartbreak Hotel. They quickly came up with the song, and Elvis wanted to record it after hearing it at a DJ convention. However, getting the song was tricky. Me Axton, the songwriter, initially refused to let RCA use the song. But when Glenn Reeves recorded a demo, she agreed to let Elvis have a say in the songwriting, offering him a third of the credit. Colonel Parker saw this as a smart move, knowing it would benefit him financially too. This story highlights how songs can come from unexpected places and how business and creativity often intertwine in the music industry. Let's talk about a song that changed the music world, Heartbreak Hotel by Elvis Presley. This song was a big deal, not just because of its sound, but because of who made it famous. Elvis took a song and made it his own, even though he didn't write it. Let's break down what happened. Elvis Presley recorded Heartbreak Hotel in January 1956. The song had a deep, sad sound. Elvis's voice cracked at the end of each verse, giving it a really emotional feel. This style was new for its time and captured people's attention. Some people thought the song wasn't good, even back then. Donald Clark, who wrote about Frank Sinatra, said it sounded terrible, like it was recorded in a weird place. But other big names, like Paul McCartney, loved it. They said it sounded perfect and beautiful, like singing from deep down in hell. Elvis's biographer Albert Goldman saw it differently. He said the song was more like a drama than real music. But Goldman also said it was amazing and changed rock music. If Elvis kept making music like this, he could have been one of the greatest makers of rock and roll. The song Money Honey was another hit. It was funny and told a sad story. Elvis did great on this one too. After recording, Elvis and his team went to New York to show these songs to the bosses at Hill and Range. They didn't like them much at first, but ended up releasing Heartbreak Hotel. At first, Sam Phillips, who owned the recording studio, thought the song was a morbid mess. But it became a huge hit, one of the most important songs of the rock and roll era. It was very different from upbeat songs like Rock Around the Clock. People outside of rock and roll didn't understand it at first. A writer named Paul Evans remembered listening to older music before discovering Elvis. He said rock and roll was special to one generation and felt like a separation from the past. Elvis's music was even parodied. That means people made fun of it in funny ways. Stan Freberg made a funny version where the singer accidentally tears his pants. Other comedy shows and even the Addams Family played with the idea. As Elvis's fame grew, he started to work less with other artists. He wanted to be in control. But getting him on a big TV show like The Ed Sullivan Show was hard. The host, Ed Sullivan, didn't like rock and roll much. He was fine with Bill Haley, but was shocked by Bo Diddley's performance. Eventually, Elvis did appear on the Ed Sullivan Show in January 1956. He sang a few songs, but not his new hit, Heartbreak Hotel. People thought it was odd, but it helped build his mystique. After this, Elvis recorded more songs in New York. These recordings became part of his first album. The songs included classics like Blue Suede Shoes and Tutti Frutti, showing how much Elvis was influenced by other great musicians. In the end, Heartbreak Hotel wasn't just a song. It was a moment that showed how music could change and create something new. Elvis took risks and made music that spoke directly to young people, marking the start of a new era in music history.